Okay, kids, it's time for another episode of the Fueled by Weird podcast, the only podcast approved by the Comics Code Authority. I'm Chris Daly, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with the very talented Wolly McNair and David Rucker. Guys, how are we doing today?
My
Doing
brother,
good, doing good.
good, amazing.
Very
How about
good.
yourself?
All right. I'm doing pretty good. Thank you. Just getting done with, like I said before we started recording, just got done with the day job, so we're just rolling into the evening, getting the nighttime rolling.
Indeed, indeed.
All right. So with my show, usually I like to start things off with an icebreaker question. Um, and like I mentioned a little bit ago, Wally, you and I have been Facebook friends for a little while, but we've never really got to meet face to face. And David, this is the first time we're getting to meet you, so I'm very excited about that. So for today's icebreaker question, I just want to ask, what are your favorite pizza toppings?
Today I haven't eaten pizza in so long, but if I did, it would probably just be cheese nowadays.
Okay, I get that, man. Being old, like really sucks because it seems like no matter what topping you put on there is going to wreck you for hours after.
Right, right.
So I get you. David, what about you?
Uh, uh, well, I guess I would go with the same thing for this week. Uh, jalapeno, Canadian bacon, and pineapple.
Oh, nice.
That sounds crazy.
That's quite a mix for sure. Yeah, I think for me, usually it's just pepperoni and sausage. But like I mentioned before, usually when you do that, you're usually paying for it later because, getting old, your body doesn't, seem to like the stuff you used to be able to handle with no problem when you're younger.
Yeah, that and because of Ninja Turtles, I was big on pepperonis for
Yeah.
years, but I don't eat pork anymore. I haven't eaten pork in years. Nothing against anybody for whatever they eat. It
Yeah.
just didn't appeal to me anymore at a certain point. And then I was like, man, so now my pizzas are just gonna be cheese from now on. So that's what it's been for a while. If I do eat pizza.
Gotcha. Yeah, heartburn is a son of a bitch. So yeah, that's kind of just it for me. Yeah, I regret it. I do it every time, but I regret it almost every time.
Sometimes you gotta suffer through a little bit of pain for a lot of joy, right?
There you go. All right, so with the concept of the show, Fueled by Weird, it kind of just talks about, all the things you're into, your hobbies, your interests, all that stuff. That's the stuff that makes you who you are, and so essentially it fuels your weird. So, Wally, let's start with you. What kind of things are you into? What stuff fuels your weird?
Oh man, all the stuff that everybody kind of digs, from comics to anime and manga, um, anything visual arts, literature, uh, martial arts, kung fu movies, um, Ninja Turtles, all that
Oh
stuff
yeah,
is super cool to me, man. Dragon Ball Z, um, the Boondocks, the list goes on and on and on, bro.
very nice. I know you and I have talked a little bit online with some anime stuff, which is a whole conversation we need to have a different day.
Yeah,
Um, and Ninja Turtles too. Those variations of the turtles you put out a little bit ago were amazing.
I
Donatello,
appreciate it.
Donatello's always been my favorite. When you popped Donatello, man, that was a good big favorite of mine.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. David, what about you? What kind of stuff are you into?
Uh, I think for me, horror films, sci-fi, anything horror, sci-fi, as
Nice.
far as written or visual,
Okay.
anime, Dragon Ball Z. Um, I got a running commentary with Wally and one of my twin sons on Dragon Ball. I think right now the one thing I think Dragon Ball Kakuma is one of the things I'm kind of getting interested in, a fan manga there. Pretty much, old school anime, Wicked City, Ninja Soul. Um, I enjoy action movies too, kung fu. Really big right now into a lot of stuff that's on Prime and Netflix featuring movies out of Japan, action. movies out of Japan and South Korea.
Nice. That's awesome. All right, so kind of rolling into, what some of the topics for today. You know, I know that you guys both created this book together, but I kind of want to break it down a little bit. So, Wally, for you, we've kind of mentioned a little bit you're an incredible artist, designer. What was it originally that got you interested in going down the path of being an artist?
Um, I mean, it just kind of was there for a long time, like, just sketching, doodling, like stick people, like whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely have to credit certain teachers. I had a teacher named Miss Anton who she would have us write in journals, and she started to encourage me to read the stories, and her that encouragement started to make me wonder, like, well, people's reaction to it was like, man, maybe I can tell stories pretty decently, and I draw a little bit, so maybe if I put the two together. And then I had other teachers throughout who would give that same encouragement in different ways. And then I started to realize the impact comics had for me, and I figured, well, I love to share certain stories, and maybe I can impact somebody else in a positive way. So once that started happening, it started being the process of trying to figure out your weaknesses and your strengths, and as far as art, especially, like, what can you do well, what can't you do, and what do you need to grow on. And going to my first real convention, seeing people set up, interacting, building community, it was pretty dope to see. So after this cat named Madero, he had a crew, and he took the time out to show me what they were doing as far as marketing, branding, and communicating with people, and getting their work out there. And it just inspired me even more to push to, get better at the craft, and figure out how to do it for a living. So that's where
That's
we are
awesome.
today.
Right on, man. It's always nice when you get teachers who, instead of just yell at you for doing stuff like that, they help encourage you. That's really
Right,
cool. For
right,
sure.
for sure.
All right,
Shout out
Dave.
to Miss Anton.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. All right, David, what about you? I kind of did a little bit of homework on you. You've been a writer for quite a while. What was it that got you into writing in the first place?
I think it was some of my childhood friends that I grew up with when they introduced me to comics, and they were all pretty good artists, and I realized that I wasn't the greatest artist in the world. All my characters all looked the same, so I kind of started playing around with the world building
Okay.
aspect of it, and I found that I really enjoyed expanding around the world more than I enjoyed drawing. I always enjoyed, telling the story more than I did the art
Right on.
aspect of it.
That's cool. Yeah, it's kind of a similar background to me where, I don't fancy myself any kind of an artist, but it seemed that, for me, it kind of clicked a little bit more telling stories with words instead of pictures. It just worked out easier for me. So that's cool. Very cool. All right. So, David, you have your studio, Decimation Studios. Wally, you have yours, Once Emperors. And then, with Danny, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. Shout out to Mr. Danny J. Quick. We miss you, buddy. Um,
Indeed.
you guys, along with a bunch of other creatives, started Beat Quest Studios. Tell me the process of you guys coming together to make this book. I want to go into the book a little bit, but I want to kind of just to hear the story behind what brought you guys together to help publish this book as a joint venture.
Um, well, me and David have slightly different variations of who actually sparked the idea first.
Okay.
I think that he sparked the idea first, but he gives me credit, but I really feel like it was him that had the vision, and then we just started to build it out. But when I met David, he was working on Decimation Earth, which is one of the books from Decimation Studios, and but he was still new to the convention scene and things of that nature. So um I invited him to tag along with me to a couple of shows. One of those shows, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, but I'm originally from Lumberton, North Carolina. And so one of those shows was in Fayetteville, which is about 20, 30 minutes out from Lumberton. Um, he went down there with me, which led to him getting to meet some family and just kind of seeing the environment and the way things move around there. And that sparked conversation, us trying to figure out how we could tell a story about this place that's loosely based on life, my life and the life of others around me, and make it interesting in this world of comics, and connect people to it. So I would say we probably talked about this for well over a year or two, right, David, before we actually started putting real motion into certain things, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It was about a year or two that we talked about it. I think we spent a lot of. I think the process really started in Fayetteville when I was helping Wally at his table. We were spitballing ideas. We would come up with concepts, and we started thumbnailing out what the basis of the story would be. And from there, we would have, I think, maybe talk 2 or 3 times a week about the story and figuring out how we wanted the story to be set up, um, fleshing out the characters, and pretty much going through the whole story arc from beginning to end to figure out how we're going to set up each issue, and then at the end of that story arc, how we wanted to end the story.
Yeah, and we decided it was a joint effort between both of our studios, and just so happened that I started building out Bequest with Danny, Rowe, and Morgan. And so it just made sense to at least put the first few issues out home base, and then we kind of, see where things are from there. But because we've all worked together in some form or fashion to help push each other's projects or just
Yeah.
talking behind the scenes before a project was coming out
Mhm.
and trying to just figure out how we could help support and help things books get seen as best as possible. So it just made sense to do it on a more official level.
Right on. That's awesome. And also, I can't forget to, since we shouted out Danny, we got to shout out Morgan and Rowe.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So, your new book, and I apologize, I should have asked this before, just it's called El Ton, right?
Correct. You see, that's
Okay.
crazy. You say it better than Danny and Morgan, and they've been knowing about this book for so long.
Nice. All right. I was so scared. I was like, I need to ask them beforehand, but I forgot, so I got nervous. So I'm glad that it
Uh,
worked out.
you got it, bro. You got it.
Awesome. So tell me about the book. Like what's it about? How, where, you kind of spoke a little bit on the inspiration from your hometown of Lumberton, but kind of let's for anyone who doesn't know and who wants to know about it, let's talk about what it's about and how it came together.
Well, I like to tell people that it's for me, it's The Wire. HBO's The Wire meets the first season of Netflix Daredevil. If you take those two and combine them, that gritty street level, layered storytelling and character development that just so happens to have more or less an anti-hero vigilante character at the center of it, though the story itself focuses not just on our main character Jamal, whose code name is Remnant, but also the city itself, the spiral that the city is in, the things that are impacted by the decisions that are made, and just following the trail. The thing I always loved about The Wire was how each season took you through a different world of events and things while bringing you right back to the core of the main characters you were following, but you watched them develop. So me and David are very intentional about trying to make sure that, as you read this story and it grows, you find characters that you love, you find characters that you hate, but whether you love them or hate them, you still hopefully find yourself wanting to still be on this journey to see where everything goes. And a key point of the story is following Jamal as he starts to make decisions. He's a cat who grew up in the streets, went to school to try to better himself and his better opportunities. Things didn't work out. Went to the military, excelled in the military, but realized that just really wasn't the path for him. Coming back to a home that he thought would be peaceful and different, and found things to be worse than it ever was. And after losing somebody important to him, it just kind of offset the chain of events that leads to him going on a path to try to save his city.
Nice. That's awesome. David, what do you want to say about it?
Uh, I think Wally pretty much hit all the high points of it. I think one of the things that we explore with Jamal is the impact of growing up in Lumberton and how that affected him, and the reason why he joined the military and how his experiences in the military has affected him from a standpoint of how he sees the world coming back to Lumberton. He grew up in one environment in Lumberton and saw the world from one lens. Then he went to the military and experienced all those things in the military and comes back with a different perception. And those two perceptions of what Lumberton is and what the world was, seeing it from a military standpoint, kind of collide with each other. And the events that happen in that story kind of mold it all together and shape Jamal into this individual that he is. We look at PTSD not only from a military, not only from someone who is a veteran who's been in the military, we also look at PTSD from the environment that he grew up in on the streets and all the things and all the violence and things that he saw growing up. So you have those two types of factors coming together, and then suffering a personal loss of a personal loss in his life once he comes back to Lumberton. So I think for the most part, this is a very gritty, realistic story where we are really doing a lot of character examination and allowing the characters to grow and be part of the reader's world, and giving the reader a chance to get invested in these characters, not only Jamal, but characters that are around Jamal.
Very cool. So, it's on Kickstarter now. Is there anything you guys want to talk about regarding the Kickstarter specifically, like added stuff, unlocks, stuff like that you wanna speak to?
I
We got a
mean,
lot of cool stuff.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
No,
Wally.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, we got a lot of cool stuff on Kickstarter, and I'll let Wally go into detail on that. But we have a lot of uh, um, options and add-ons that you can get with the tiers. Anybody who does get involved with this Kickstarter and pledges is definitely going to be part of this family, and they're going to experience a lot of this story by getting involved and supporting us.
Very cool.
Yeah, so a lot of the of course we have the book. We have different variant covers from a few different artists who took part and of course the main. So I'm me being the illustrator, I stepped out of the way of doing the interiors and we brought in a very dope artist named Solomon Farias. Hope I'm saying your last name right, Solomon. Um just because I got more stories than I have the time to try to draw. And so me and David discussed and sought out different artists, looked at different work, and tried to find someone that we felt like could capture the emotions, capture the mood, the feelings, which we think Solomon does an amazing job of doing. Um, but we have t-shirts, we have skate decks with art from the book. We have a companion book, which is the entire script, as well as the black and white version of the art, so you can see the art in its purest form. Um, I think we also have character sketches in that book. It's a 100-page book, but it's a companion to the
Wow.
first issue and kind of a guide to other characters that you'll see as the story evolves.
Okay.
We have a 6-inch statue of Jamal as Remnant. You can either get the do-it-yourself version or you can get the fully painted version. We have a soundtrack that was provided by artists from the area of Lumberton and surrounding locations, because I just wanted to get people involved who are really from the area and hopefully cross promote and share. And the goal would be to do a new volume of music with different artists of different genres and backgrounds every time that we do a book. And that just continues to hopefully build community and help cross promote and spread the word. So just by pledging to any of the tiers, you'll get that download once the campaign ends of the soundtrack. Um, Man, I'm probably forgetting something, but I think we got some original art. We've got a retailer tier. We've got a bunch of different stuff, bro. Just trying to make make a lot of options for people, but at the same time, make it worth the money, whenever you support the campaign.
Very cool.
I,
Now, go ahead.
I'm not. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if Wally mentioned this. Wally, I don't know if you mentioned this, but we do have a tier for a documentary of Lumberton. With if you pledge, you can get a producer credit on the documentary that's going to be done on Lumberton.
That's cool.
Um, yep.
Yeah. So we started what started as an idea for just a mini doc blossom into we could do this on a larger scale so we could tell more of the story of Lumberton, the community, the people, the good, the bad, straight from the mouths of people who were there or are there, you know. In addition to that, we have a few other things in the works that we're building towards, but of course, this book is the foundation of all of it. When me and David first started this project, one of the first thoughts was this would make an amazing television show or a really dope anime if we could get the right team and funding behind it. But let's start where it makes the most sense. Let's do a book first, So the documentary is super, super important. We did a mini trailer for it that last I checked was at like 30 some thousand views. So it let us know that there was a real interest in that side of the story as well.
Yeah, for sure. And that's really cool because, not a lot of people are doing something like that. So it's really nice to see, people trying different things and new things and just kind of seeing what hits. That's
Right. Right.
very cool. Now, you guys were talking earlier about how you lined out different, excuse me, sorry. You guys have lined out different storylines and story arcs. Where do you see Elton going? I mean, clearly it's more than just a one shot. You've definitely got long-term plans for it. Is it like a mini series or do you have like a long-term plan for it? Let's say in like an ideal
You
world,
want to
if,
ask?
you got all the funding for it and everything, like, well, how do you see the story playing out?
Um,
You,
Go ahead, Dave.
you want to answer that? Or you want me to answer it?
I mean, give your thoughts. Give your thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have stories that we can tell from Elton. I think one story that I want to do definitely in Elton is Jamal's early years in the military, his experiences in the military, how he grew into this individual that he is now in Elton. I think we could do several stories of some of the characters because there's going to be other characters that are going to be introduced into the story that we can do spin-offs on. We had talked about an idea of this story arc being the beginning of the story itself of Jamal and Elton, and maybe doing the character of Jamal's character centered on him, and this me just throwing out an idea. Maybe we just do a story simply on Elton and Lumberton and all the different characters and all the different people that lived there. Sort of, I don't think you would call it an anthology, but it would be different viewpoints of how everybody survives in Lumberton. We had talked about, I think Wally and I had talked about one time about talking about a young man who finds himself in a position that he needs to support his family. So he goes into having to, sell drugs maybe or do something that is very questionable because his mother has three jobs and he has two kids two younger siblings at home. He doesn't necessarily want to do this, but this is something he has to do because he's trying to help support his family. And we wanted to look at that to say, hey, a lot of decisions are made in life not because of because hey, I've seen this guy drive down the street with a brand new car and he's doing it because he's slanging or he's doing it because he's a dope boy or he's a stick up kid. But no, I'm doing it because I got to survive. I got to put food on the table. I have to help my mom take care of my brother and sister. I think those are some of the stories that we want to examine as well. Maybe look at the social and just the justice system of how if someone in that position finds himself in that position, how does he maneuver through the justice system and survive? Those are just some of the ideas in my head that I think we could do with this story, but I'll kick it over to Wally and get his thoughts, and he can share his thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, and to piggyback off of what David's saying, we do explore some of the subjects he's talking about, but I think just saying to expand upon those things even
Yeah,
more,
for sure.
because within 6 issues, story arcs, you can only cover so much. And then there's things that we could give even brighter light to if we expand and do spin-offs and things of that nature. But for the story of Jamal, we've kind of got a pretty good idea of where we want to go with the first 6 issues and what starts to happen within the next few issues and so on and so forth, and kind of a skeleton of at the worst, if we only make it to this point, this is where we want this to close out. But if we, had endless resources and the ability to just go, 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 we've kind of mapped out enough to say, man, we could, like David said, we could feed the world of Elton for quite some time. We'd have room to do quite a few different stories and dive into different things. And even with what we are doing, nothing is just from one perspective. When you meet other characters, it helps to show these other perspectives of the world and why things are this way. Because how Jamal sees it is not how another character that's introduced later views it. You know what I mean? Like even people who understand the other side of these decisions that David was mentioning still may see it differently. Like, well, you could have done this instead of that, and they choose to do that, and you see the outcome of that. So, we've got a dreamland of things we want to do, but we definitely know where we're going with his aspect of the story and the people who are directly tied into him.
That's
And I
awesome.
think, yeah, and if I could add to that, I think a perfect example of how we want to examine this rich world of Elton is, if you remember, I think, what is it, season 2 or 3 of The Wire, when they introduced the life on the docks in Baltimore, where they went in and explored the union and how one man was trying to hold the union together, the stevedores together, when work wasn't necessarily available for all those gentlemen that were working the docks. And he ended up having to get into bed with organized crime and having to bribe people to bring work into the ports, into the piers in the Baltimore area. And I think that's what we are trying to examine. I think we're trying to flesh this out into a full blown story that has feeling that you can get into. It's just not another comic book, it's an actual story.
That just so happens to have a dude that'll punch you in the face and
Yeah.
wears armor and can
Yeah.
take a few hits himself.
Right on.
Right.
And
Right.
just so people know, David is he's a retired Marine. Is that the proper way to say it, David? Retired?
No, I'm not
Uh,
retired.
well, not retired from his
No,
day life, but he's
yeah,
he's
yeah.
he's I hate saying
I
former
was
Marine because I feel like once you're in the military, you're a part of it. But
once a Marine, always a Marine. But I was in the
yeah,
Marine Corps. I did 11 and a half years in the infantry. Um, and that was an experience that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. Um, but yeah, I think that's one of the things that I wanted also. This story is to tell a version of what it's like to be a veteran. And I think some of the scenes that we write in this book and the stories will resonate with veterans from a sense of how we take the time to look at the tactics and how Jamal moves from a military standpoint when he engages with his enemies. And I think also we're going to try to give voice to those veterans that who need a voice, as far who are suffering from PTSD or who are suffering from not being heard from their personal experiences and pain.
That's awesome. Well, before we keep going any further, David, I want to take a minute to thank you for your service, sir. So I'm just going to speak for everybody. It's very much appreciated. Um,
Thank you.
so with this book, that by the way, it sounds incredible. I'm very excited to read it. Um, is are there your so you're very focused on telling the story of Jamal. Are there going to be other characters kind of like him? Like if we're going to put this in a Daredevil type world, are there going to be other characters, not necessarily superheroes, but character vigilante characters like him that he'll have to interact with, kind of just making way, because you had mentioned that you plan on, hopefully expanding the world out to see more of the world outside of him. Are there going to
Mhm.
be other characters like that they're going to be introduced?
Yeah, we already have designs for characters. We've already started. Like there's a lot of things,
Right on.
we just want to make sure we center people to a certain degree, and then just like a world map in the game, you say, hey, here's a side quest, and here's this other thing, and here's someone in the background that's causing this, and so we're kind of mapping out how those interactions will happen and things of that nature as things move forward. But there's definitely other characters. We just wanted to put a lot of emphasis on getting this core down first, so there
Sure.
wasn't too much happening at one
Yeah.
time. But yeah, we before we even had a page drawn, we already were into some other characters that would pop up.
Right on. So you guys have been cooking on
Yeah,
this a minute.
yeah, yeah, and that was a fun process. That was definitely a fun process for Wally and I because we're bouncing off ideas. What if we do this? What if we create this character? I like that idea, but we can't bring. At one point we had to say to ourselves, "Put the brakes on. We can't come out with all these characters at once. It's like
Yeah.
we got to piecemeal them out. I mean, he has to sometimes have to pull me back because when I start writing with him, I'm like, oh yeah, here's an idea for a character, and he's like, nah, hold up, man, we need to pull that back. We can't give them all. We can't really show everything our hand, you know. So
Yeah, which
yeah,
has been
it's been fun.
that's been a struggling point for us. I had to it hit me one day like we don't have to rush everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we want this to have longevity, so we can map it out, think it out, and plan it out in a way where it builds up the way it needs to. You know what I'm saying? Like right
Sure.
now, we're not under the pressure of any company or anything of that nature where we have to adhere to certain things. So we can just work based on what we feel like makes the most sense and what we feel like brings the most joy and it gets people involved and whatever. And that's been a very fun part. Each book seems to have sections of threes, from the action to the flashbacks to the information that's given to you. Like it's each book builds in a certain way that kind of becomes a pattern, and then we can break that pattern and circle back. So it's just been cool, like building this whole story out, you know.
That's cool. And yeah, that's always the fun part of the creating process is, hey, we could do this. So what about this? Like, whoa, you gotta, yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you guys had a good time. That's awesome. So before we wrap up, I just kind of want to give you guys both a chance. I like to end these with um giving you guys a chance to give out some advice to creatives. Just, any kind of advice from, how to get started to, how to keep going. Just any kind of encouragement you guys have that you want to offer.
I mean, for me, I'll say to get started, just start. You know, that's the biggest thing. Like, don't keep putting it off or coming up with excuses or, hey, I don't have enough of this or I don't have enough of that. That's cool. If you got a sheet of paper and something to write or draw with, that's your start. I used to create a lot of stuff in my head, just riding the city bus as a kid, building stories out or laying in bed or on a couch, just thinking things out and then get up and jot those things down. So, number one is to just start. Whether you have the resources, the funds or not, just start somewhere. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have anything in hand, then you can't move anything forward. So get that part done, and then you can kind of figure out the rest of it. Like, we're running a Kickstarter. Kickstarters are very nerve-wracking. They're very, very stressful because you're
Yeah,
hoping everything pans out the way that you need it to. But at least you get to that place where you have something that you can even put in front of people. I tell people to look at One Punch Man all the time. Like, from my understanding, the guy couldn't afford an artist, and he just started drawing crazy pictures and putting it up online, and look where it's at now. You know what I mean? Like
true.
it would have never happened if he hadn't taken those first steps. And as far as keeping yourself going, I try to only look at other people from the standpoint of learning and inspiration over comparison, because when you start, I saw a quote, some to the degree of comparison is is the death of success or something like that. I'm misquoting it, but it was something to that degree.
Yeah.
Because you start trying to say, you start saying, hey, well, why am I not this? And why am I not there? And why this? And instead of looking at what you have done and you are doing and what else you could do, once you step forward. So just stay active. Believe in yourself no matter what anybody else is saying, what nobody else is telling you. If I had listened to the naysayers a long time ago, I wouldn't even be having this conversation right now. I don't know what I'd be doing, but it wouldn't be this. You know what I mean? So just believe in you and stay active.
Yeah, that's good advice because, if you're sitting trying to compare yourself to someone else, it's just going to be discouraging. And, because not everyone has the same journey. And so, what you're doing is something totally different. And then even if the person you're comparing yourself to is doing something very similar to you, they're not going to do it the way you do it. So you shouldn't get discouraged. Just keep going. And like you said, with, just starting, I mean, you can sit and have an idea percolate in your head for however long, but you can't, and you can sit and think that I'm going to fix this and fix this, but really, you're not really fixing it unless you have it in front of you. Whether you type it out, you write it, you draw it, whatever, you can't make changes to it until you actually start doing it. So
Right.
that's good advice.
Indeed. Indeed. David?
I would agree with everything that Wally had said, but I would add what is needed to success is to surround yourself with people who share the same vision, who are go-getters, who want to succeed. That's important. Is
Absolutely.
surrounding yourself with people like that who have a vision, who have a passion, who want to create, who want to succeed. And at the same time, from a writing standpoint, for mine, create what you want to see. Create what you would want the world to look like from when you tell your stories. It's easy, right now we see in Hollywood everybody doing remakes. And I think it was an interview I saw with Jerry Seinfeld and Jeff Gaffigan when they were talking about um, how easy it is to make remakes instead of original idea.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, we can do another Star Wars. That's easy. We've got the formula, we've got the concept, we can do that instead of creating an original idea or coming up with something new. And I think that is something that us as indie creators and creators as a whole is to stay true to your vision, stay true to what you believe in and what you envision your story being about. Um, and no matter how much you hate it or how much you think it sucks, just keep going. Because the only way you're going to get better is like what they say, practice makes perfect,
Yeah.
you know, you know. So just keep that vision, keep that drive, keep that passion, and don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. Don't take no as an answer. You
Yeah, for
know,
sure. And, it's good to, create what you want to see in the world because, if there's something that you want that you can't find it, you should go out and create it because chances are you're not going to be the only person that wants that because you don't,
no,
there's a lot of times that you don't know what you want until you find it. And if it doesn't exist and you create it, there's chances are there's going to be someone else out there that wants it.
True indeed. True
yep,
indeed.
For sure.
true.
All right. Well, guys, I appreciate all of that. Let's give you guys a second to, where can we find you at? Let's give you a chance to plug yourselves. Where can we keep up to date with stuff that's going on with you?
For me right now, the probably most consistent place to find me is Instagram for right now, because I don't know what's going on with Instagram. But it's at Wally V. That's WOLLYV as in Victor.
And for me, it's Instagram right now as well. Decimation Earth IX. That's at Decimation Earth IX. For the most part, you're going to see a lot of stuff that'll be on there to keep you up to date.
Very cool. And make sure everybody check out the Kickstarter, of course, for Elton. I'll make sure to put the link in the description of the video. How much longer until the Kickstarter is over? Do you guys know the date? I can't
It
remember off the
ends
top of my head.
June 22nd.
Right on. So we got plenty of time still. So guys,
Yes,
definitely
sir.
go check it out. Let's get these guys funded. And if you can't, if for whatever reason you're not able to support, spreading the word, sharing the word to your friends, getting it out there, that's just as helpful. So definitely
Indeed.
let's help get this out there. All right, guys, and for for housekeeping for myself, definitely check out this interview and lots of other interviews at geeknetwork.com. Also check out our new parent company, Metal Ninja Studios. They're your one-stop shop for all things comic book. Check out Geek Network on Facebook, and we're at GeeksAZ on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow this show on Instagram and Facebook just at Fueled by Weird, and hit me up with an email at fueledbyweird@gmail.com. Hit me up with your favorite pizza toppings. You want to talk comics or any kind of questions or comments, hit me up. And this show is part of the Geek Network Podcast Syndicate. There's lots of good shows out there. Go check them out. The music for the show is by Polygon Horizon. The name of the song is Pizza Force. Go check out Polygon Horizon on Bandcamp. They're a great band. The logos for the show are done by my friends Chris Chandler and Mike Belcher. A couple other comic book guys. Go check them out. They're a couple of really great guys. And if you like the show, please leave a review and tell your friends, because word of mouth is our friend. And remember, kids, to embrace the things that fuel your weird and always geek responsibly. Wally, David, thanks so much for joining me tonight.
We appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, thank you for
Absolutely.
having us.
Absolutely.